Let's go through the step-by-step process of measuring your kitchen space in preparation for planning a new layout. Planning your own renovations is a great way to both save money and have a space that works well for you. My name's Neil, and I've been planning kitchens for 10 years, and no matter the size or the shape, the method is always the same. In this video, I'm going to share with you the top 3 tips on how to get things started when it comes to measuring your kitchen space. To get started, all you're going to need is 3 things: a tape measure, something to write on, and something to write with. The clearest way to write this down is in a top-down drawing. And it's important to measure each section as we go and labeling clearly. As long as you can make sense of the final drawing, that's all that really matters. Step 1, measuring the walls. It might seem obvious, but it's the easiest place to start going wrong. To do this, we need to find the width of each wall. We want to include as much information about the space as possible, including the size and placement of windows, doors, pillars, fixtures, beams, and any other extrusions. A common mistake I see a lot of people make is only measuring your existing cabinets instead of the actual space. While most UK kitchen retailers stick to similar sizes, some have their own unique way of doing things. By measuring the full space, you'll ensure that any small tweaks or major adjustments fit perfectly. When you're measuring the wall, you want to avoid measuring the whole length as one. Instead, try to measure each section of wall independently. So for example, if you took the width of your door and your window and each of the wall sections in between, you could then line up your sink with the center of the window and make sure that you've got enough wall space before you're meeting your door. When measuring doors, it's important that you include the door frame in that measurement. You only really typically need to measure the height of the door if you're planning on putting something above it. When measuring windows, you want to include the width, which is probably the most important measurement, but you also want to include the height of the window, as well as the height from the floor to the bottom of the windowsill. This is to help us understand later when we come to planning units what's going to fit and where. When it comes to measuring pillars or posts or any other extrusions that come into the room, you want to measure the width, but you also want to measure the depth on both sides of the pillar. This is so that if you come to planning units around it later, you know what you're dealing with on both sides, whether you can buy a reduced depth unit or whether you might need to cut a unit around the pillar. If any of your extrusions into the room are complex, I recommend just making a good drawing of them with as much information as possible. As a bonus tip for the wall measurements, you probably want to measure your wall in 2 places, one at base unit level and one at wall unit level. Rooms are very rarely square like they appear on a CAD machine. Taking these 2 measurements is going to help you understand how square your room is and how much wiggle room you might need to account for during the planning. We want to be factoring wiggle room in when we're planning our units so that you don't have the fuss of your unit and your plan not fitting your space. Step 2, measuring the height of the room. When measuring the height of the room, you want to start from the floor all the way to the ceiling. You don't need to include skirting board. This is either going to be covered by your base units or it's going to be removed entirely. You also need to take into consideration any beams that come in at ceiling height. This also accounts for any stairs, any boxes, anything that comes into the room. You may want to make a detailed note about what that extrusion is and what sort of role it might play in what sort of units you could fit into your space. Step 3, considering any fixed components. Fixed components can be almost anything that you deem to be unmovable in your kitchen. We've already talked about pillars and posts, but we also need to take into consideration a boiler, pipes, sockets, or maybe an appliance that can't move from where it is. Ultimately, all these components could be moved, but it will save you time and money when it comes to fitting the kitchen if you can take into consideration where they will stay beforehand. Alternatively, you could plan it without any of these items and figure out where they're going to go in your plan later on when we come to planning units. Here's a few extra tips that you might want to consider depending on your space. A good tip I have for measuring open plan spaces is that it is actually good to measure the whole room, not just the part you're going to fit the kitchen in. But only measuring the space that you plan to use as the kitchen will work just fine. Thinking ahead about where you may want your key components may highlight if you need to take into consideration anything unique to your room. If you think it's going to be important to the later stages of a plan, I recommend recording it somewhere. You never know when you're going to need it. And there you have it, all you need to know about measuring your kitchen space. Whether you're starting fresh or updating an existing space, these steps will get you started on your journey to creating a space that's going to work for you. I hope that after watching this video, you're feeling confident about measuring your space. At Better Kitchens, we really want the planning and the buying process to be completely transparent so that you're always understanding what you're going to buy and why. If you're looking for the next steps, then head over to betterkitchens.co.uk where you can download our free planning guide to get you started. You can also try out 3D Planner. It's a free resource that will help you visualize how your new kitchen is going to come to life. Plus, you can book a free planning appointment to get expert advice and compare prices to make sure that you're getting the best deal. So hit that like button if you found this helpful and subscribe for more kitchen design tips. And let me know in the comments if there was anything that you struggled with when planning your kitchen. Until next time.